Hello and welcome to Makers.dev episode number Will You Still Need Me? Will You Still Feed Me When I'm 64? Chris, Slava Ukraini, Yerom Slava.
I recognize some of those words. We are, 5 days or so into the invasion of Ukraine as we're recording this. I imagine anything we say now will be horribly out of date by the time this comes out in a couple weeks. But yeah, that's something that's going on in the world, and it's pretty crazy.
Wild to be going through a crisis like this. I feel like this, like the Afghanistan thing. I think I was a little too young to understand quite what was going on, and then Cold War stuff. I was born the same year that the Soviet Union disbanded, so I never really felt anything about the Cold War. But I got into this when I heard that Vladimir Putin said that he was rearming his nuclear arsenal, or like had that on standby. Yeah, so that's scary. So I did some Googling of like, what's the atomic blast radius of if like Dallas were hit? How far out would I have to be? And a 100 megaton bomb, of which I think Russia is in possession of, would just wipe out everything. That I wouldn't have a chance unless I had like several hours notice and just drove like as far away as I could. And then I started digging more into like the geopolitical thing and exactly what they're doing. Oh, I learned the term saber rattling, which is used to describe that Putin is probably just saying, hey, everyone, remember that I have nukes, right. So you got to respect me. But he's not actually planning on detonating anything. But what was very interesting to me about this conflict is that, unlike a lot of other things, like COVID-19, I sort of like to play both sides and understand both sides. I'm like, okay, well, yes, it's very good for herd mentality if everyone gets vaccinated, and at the same time, we're impinging on individual rights, and like maybe the vaccines haven't been fully researched, and like I can sort of understand the perspective of the Canadian convoy, and at the same time, from the other side, like you're disrupting Canada and being a nuisance, and it's very complicated. This one seems so clear cut. This one seems like Russia, stop invading Ukraine. That's bad.
Yeah.
So it was kind of refreshing. Based on what I know so far, it seems like Russia is obviously in the wrong here, and they're trying to do a cheeky move to take over Ukraine. And we're still early in this. The developments have yet to come out. I still don't understand it, but so far it feels refreshing to have a very clear-cut Ukraine is in the right and Russia is in the wrong, and let's help Ukraine. So that feels kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say, I guess. I think he expected to be able to walk in and kind of take it quickly, and obviously that didn't happen. And I've seen a lot of posts that are basically like, he succeeded in uniting the world against him. That's something, that in itself is a unique feat. It's crazy. Yeah.
He's strengthened NATO, which is so probably gotten a lot more countries like Sweden and Finland, I think, have been on the fence, and they're coming in with this like, man, when Sweden is acting against you, you're doing something really wrong. Switzerland also is like sending arms to Ukraine. It's nuts. And then the sanctions are just unilateral. It's the entire world is like, no more trading with us, and any money you have with us, you can't get anymore. It's they've been banished from modernity. All right, that's all we'll say about that, because we have so much to talk about in this episode. Oh my gosh. I would like to start with, you might be selling MeetingPlace. I have intentionally not been talking to you about this on Twitter so that we could have this conversation on this podcast. Please tell me everything.
Yeah, that is a thing that is happening. I was going to build up to that.
I'm sorry.
I have lots of other things that I have lots of other things that happened this week. But yeah, it'll probably be the title of this episode. So let's not bury the lead. After last week, like, in the last podcast, I was sort of waffling. I was like, what do I do with MeetingPlace? That's something I should be working on. I feel bad about not working on it. And I was like, I offhandedly said, I could sell it. I offhandedly said I could sell it, but whatever. And so that night, actually, I went on MicroAcquire, and I just was like, well, let's see what this is all about. And I made an account, and I started putting details in. And before I knew it, I had a profile. And it's like, do you want to push this live? And I was like, yeah, okay. So I did. And it was a really neat experience. I got several buyers. So first of all, MicroAcquire pre-vets, like, you can't just post anything. They pre-vet, so you go back and forth a couple of times. And the first price I had was too high based on my current MRR, which I knew. But that they're like, if you bring it down a little, then we'll list it. So I brought it down a little, and it was still higher. So they like to see like multiples with like 3 to 6 times annual revenue. In mine is like double that. But it's also because the MRR is not crazy high, and a lot of what people are going to be paying for is the tech behind it. So yeah, I got like maybe 10 inquiries. I talked to 2 people and 1 offer, and that's we keep talking, and he's writing up the purchase agreement now. It should close this week. So, barring anything bad, yeah, I'll be selling MeetingPlace.
That's amazing. Congratulations. One small thought here. This started with you making an account on MicroAcquire, and I'm consistently amazed at how such big things can happen by such small initial actions. Like, it seems like to have on your to-do list, like, sell my company, that would just stay there forever. And you'd just be like, this is overwhelming. How can I possibly do this? But if you break it down into, well, what's the very next step? I would start an account on MicroAcquire. And then what do I do after that? Well, I would fill in the details for MeetingPlace. And what would I do after that? Well, I would put an initial price. And it's just those little tiny steps when they stack up. My gosh, you're selling your company now. And after not that many steps, I'm reminded of when I got my wisdom teeth taken out about a year ago. It started a very similar way. It felt like this huge daunting thing that was just like, man, should I even get my wisdom teeth out? What do I even do? And I started by just, okay, let me schedule an appointment with an oral surgeon, and we'll go from there. And just by starting that was the ball that got rolling to now I have 4 fewer teeth than I had before. So this feels like another example of that. I would love to, if you're comfortable, dig into a little bit more of the numbers. Can you talk about what the full price is?
It's not done yet, so okay. We may have to save some of that information for a later date. Okay, I can talk. I can talk. Yeah. I'll say it's not a huge amount, but it's enough to be interesting to me. If I were to have just consulted for all the hours that I put into MeetingPlace, I would have undoubtedly made more money by consulting. But that's fine. It's a really neat experience, and it really it gives me a whole new perspective too. Because some SaaSes, I'm worried about if I actually grow this and 2 years later I hate it, then now I hate my life, But now I'm just like, well, I can just sell it.
Yeah.
And that's something I've been learning viscerally. Obviously this isn't $1 million sale or something, so that's why it's taken 2 weeks instead of 6 months. Yeah. But still, it's pretty easy to sell stuff. It turns out. Yeah. What
a fantastic lesson! How much more valuable is this than? I don't know. If you had an MBA, this is actual practical. You have built a company and you've sold it, and it's at a much smaller scale. But now, you now know in the back of your head, it's not this huge, scary I could sell my company, but that's just a mountain of complexity, and I don't know what that would entail. You can picture now, for all of the rest of your career in the future, if you have a thing, you'll be able to sort of calculate based on the numbers how they are now, if I did get that 6 times multiple, it would be about this much, and it would take about this much work. Oh, but it would be a little bit of a pain because I'd have to take this Heroku accountant and switch it over. But I've already done that, and now that I've done that once, I can do things to make that easier in the future. You've learned so much about that process now. It's no longer scary to be selling your company. How fun! It makes me want to do this with a smaller project just to walk through what it's like, so it's not scary to me anymore, because that's how it's been for me historically. What advice would you give yourself of a week or 2 ago? Well, more directly, what advice would you give to me? For me right now, the idea of selling a company is just this huge tangle of weeds. Feels very scary. I've seen talks by Patrick McKinsey where he's saying it was such a pain to sell a bingo card creator, and he had to go and do due diligence and get a bunch of receipts, and it was a whole thing. But what is your experience in this been so far?
Yeah, so I think that happens for sure when your company's a little bigger, when you have more accounts. So I don't have that many customers. I can list them all on one page, right? And also it depends a lot on the buyer. So the buyer who I'm selling to, hopefully, is a developer just like me, trying to get into entrepreneurship, and he really likes this business idea. He has a lot of ideas himself, and so because he's not like a company that buys companies a lot, he's new to it as well, and so he just wants to move quickly too. And so if you find the right buyer who just wants to move quickly too, you can we are both basically acting in good faith. We've had multiple meetings now, and we both we're not don't nearly have the same level of involvement as something else. So if you were to try to sell a small project, then that's probably going to be your experience too. I think you'll probably find buyers for small projects that will just pay, upfront in cash, not very many questions asked. If you're trying to sell file inbox, that's when I think you probably go through a couple, probably months of due diligence, I imagine, with lawyers and stuff. But at the same time, it's all like, don't think about it like a giant thing you have to do, like you said, like once you get the ball rolling, like the steps are really laid out. Especially MicroAcquire has been really nice. They have, like, you message the buyers, it's all in the app, and then they have like letter of intent templates, they have purchase agreement templates, they have like which stage you're at, they have like everything that's laid out really well, I think. So I would definitely recommend MicroAcquire for anything under a few $1,000,000 even. Like as part of the other thing is you have to become a buyer on MicroAcquire, you have to like pay money. That's how they make money. But since I am a seller, I can now also see the whole marketplace with all the listings. So that's kind of neat.
Oh, cool.
There's people selling multi-million-dollar businesses on there also.
Wow.
So, it's not so micro. So yeah.
How interesting. I guess on the scale of like global finance and mergers and acquisitions, it's
Yeah.
a few million is just tiny. But yeah, that's a life-changing amount of money for solopreneur. How cool. I heard a strategy. This may have come from a tweet from Tyler Tringas or something, that you can build apps for MicroAcquire just as templates of like, build a generic chat app or something and then push it up there, or build a generic to-do app and push it up there. What's your feel on that as a strategy? Is there, if you were going to do this again and with the sole intent of building something to sell on MicroAcquire for the highest profit possible, where you would actually be financially ahead of if you just did versus if you did consulting, does that seem viable?
I think you could, but the problem is, the problem is at that rate, you're probably better off with no customers. So as soon as you have one customer, then people will measure you against your MRR or your ARR, or TTM, trailing 12 months, really. And so if I was going to do that, I would try to have no revenue, but have it all baked and ready to go, so that someone could just turn the switch and start getting revenue. The other thing I'd do is make it super simple, have good documentation for everything, keep all the accounts separate. So right now I'm trying to separate out all of the pieces like AWS and all this stuff. So if you have that just completely separate, like you can hand over like one username and password, that'd be the easiest, obviously. Which it turns out, so I'm gonna have to figure this out, but like a lot of my accounts have two-factor auth turned on, so I can't even turn over just a username and password. So we're gonna have to transfer, I think, every single thing. There's like, maybe 7 or 8 pieces to transfer, which is
Oof.
So that's kind of annoying. But so I think you can do it, but if you're not willing to put 12 months into it to get a really good trailing 12 months revenue, then I would try to do it with no revenue. That's what but that really limits what you can get for it too. So
based on just how much you've been poking around MicroAcquire, is there a particular app that you would do that with? Do you see a market demand for a specific type of app?
Probably, if you're going to try to do that, I would do add-ons to existing things. So like a Shopify app or a WordPress plugin or a Slack app or things like that, because people kind of understand what they are. The market is easy to validate. So I would do that, which of course means you're going to have customers, because if it's live in the App Store, you're going to have customers. But yeah, that's probably what I would do. These more standalone apps, they seem to be bigger on MicroAcquire. Yeah.
Cool. Neat. I'm so excited for you. What a fun adventure. I'm a little curious about your motivation to sell. As far as I know, this has just been a thing that's sort of been rolling along, that doesn't take a lot of your ongoing effort. You're able to do a master's and build other SaaS apps at the same time that you're just sort of passively running MeetingPlace in the background. Why is the future where you sold this better than the future where you just keep it running?
Yeah, so there's a few things. One is get some cash, which is nice.
Yeah.
The other is anytime I work on something else, I have the feeling in the back of my head that I should be working on MeetingPlace instead. And so that will get rid of that feeling. And part of the reason I feel that way is because I've sort of implicitly promised a lot of users of MeetingPlace, like features are coming, or like I have big visions for what I want it to do. And I feel bad every time that I think about that not happening, because there's some pretty easy things I could do and I just never end up doing them. And so But this guy's really excited to be working on, the app. And so the app's going to like improve a lot, I think, in the short term for a lot of the users of MeetingPlace. So it's good from that end as well. Support, like I was only getting, I don't know, 2 to 4 support requests a week maybe, which is not much at all, but they would sit in my inbox and I would stare at them every time I opened my email, so so a lot of it's a mental thing, it's like freeing up a lot of mental space, and I'm turning it over to someone who's actually going to do all the things I wanted to do, but instead I am getting a master's degree.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. That's I feel analogously about File Inbox. So it'll be interesting to track this for the next few months, for you clearing the mental bandwidth, being able to refocus on your master's degree, being able to refocus on other SaaS projects that you're doing, versus I think I'm trying to have one last go at it of like, okay, what if I really do buckle down and really do focus on this, and trying to clear the headspace in a different way of like hiring a personal assistant to my customer support emails, and forcing myself, which we'll talk about in a second, to like sit down and make these changes. It'll be interesting to see how those go. I don't know that one is, from here, it doesn't seem like one is necessarily a better choice than the other. I see pros and cons to each side. Cool. I'm excited for you.
Thanks. The other thing that this made painfully clear is that the calculation of SaaS like valuations. So at say 6 times or 5 times or something, every paying group is worth like between $500 and $1,000 to a MeetingPlace valuation. So like, so like for every group I didn't get to pay, that's like $500 to $1,000 that I'm not getting in the sale. And so it's like, when you do the math, I should have spent $400 per group in ads or something to get more groups before I sold it. And so I started doing that math, and I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't sell it. Maybe I should do some of these. But then I, for all the reasons we just talked about, the mental energy and everything, like it's better if this guy just takes it, I think. So, So for File Inbox, that's what I would do. Is I would do all the things that you would tell an acquirer to do right away, and just see if they move the needle before selling it.
Makes so much sense. And I think I've been hamstrung by doing that because of technical debt, because of the way I built it, and also, so 2 things I think have been holding me back. The first is customer support emails. So in the back of my head, when I'm simulating like, wouldn't it be great if I had 10 times more customers paying me 10 times more money? A big piece of me is like, oh no, because that would also mean 10 times more customer support emails, and I already hate the amount of support emails that I'm getting now. So that would be so much worse. And the second thing is, from an infrastructure standpoint, there's in the current infrastructure on Rails, there's so much that would need to happen to like it wouldn't be twice as complex. It would be like 5 times as complex to have 10 times more capacity to be able to do this. And those problems are just gut-wrenchingly terrifying to me, because when a database goes down, it's like, oh my god, I gotta reach in and like do stuff and rely on database backups that I haven't been doing, and my whole world just comes crashing down, and that's terrifying. So I'm addressing those by hiring Rachel and having her doing customer support emails, and that's great. That's been just such a load off. And then switching the infrastructure to be serverless, which means for me to go from 1 to 1,000 and then to 1 million is merely, if I've architected it correctly, which I'm pretty sure I am, is merely paying a higher bill to Firebase. And otherwise, everything else should scale perfectly. There's no bottleneck in the system the way I'm working on architecting it that will make the DevOps a constraining thing. So I'm hoping with those 2 shackles released that like I can think much more rationally about, hey, my LTV for a customer is whatever, $1,500. That means I can rationally spend $1,499 to get a customer and still be ahead. There's some math that Jordan Gall did in a microconf talk, I think it was 2 years ago, where he's talking about spending something like $5,000 in ads and how it increased his company's valuation by like $2 million. Those numbers are wrong, but it's roughly that scale. I'll link it in the show notes. And it's nuts, and it tracks. Like, that is how SaaS math works. It's stupid. And if you're thinking about it that way, and if you're good at playing the game of spending money to get more customers, that opens up so many interesting things you can do. Like, for that scale of money, I could buy all of Rachel's time for the entire month and have her call people up individually and be like, hey, first interaction, I'd like to send you some lunch. What's your favorite restaurant? And then she can buy them lunch. And then she can call back the next day and say, hey, I'm Rachel, the person who bought your lunch. Can I talk to you about your file upload things? And I'll be like, sure, why not? You might send me lunch again. It would open up silly things that would make growth a lot more feasible. But I'm currently held back because of the infrastructure. And my gosh, we're getting that done. And I'm very excited to talk about how we're getting that done. But first, anything else you want to talk about with selling your business?
No, I don't think so. I'll have more updates once it's done, but so far it's been pretty painless. He seems excited. I seem excited, so yeah.
Cool. What's a good transition for this? There's not going to be a transition. You also have done some data competitions.
Yeah. Transition complete.
What are you up to with that? What are you doing?
Yeah, some quick updates there. I talked about the snow water equivalent competition last week. All the work is done for that, but now every week I submit predictions for the next until June, so like several months, or until July almost. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know where I was going to be. I'm currently in 8th place, which is good. That's higher than I thought. So
higher than last time too.
Yeah. I didn't have a place before.
Okay.
Yeah. And so because like you submit and then it takes a while for them to get the data in for the actual ground truth and compare. So let's see, if I get to top 5, then that is prize money, so that'd be cool. And I think like I'm within that margin, so I could get to top 5. I could also sink a few places. And I can't, like, the rules are you can't work on it. Like, the model's frozen. I've already submitted my model, and so it's just now evaluating every week. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. And then on the Kaggle side, on the Kaggle essay competition, I joined a team, and so like I think we talked about that last time. That happened, and we are now up from 70th place to 20th place. So
wow,
we are rising there. So that has like 3 weeks left, and so I'm working on that. So that's the whole data side.
I remember the last time you joined a team for a Kaggle competition, you specialized, you took part of the problem, and they took parts of the problem that they were good at, and that's what you look for in a team is complementary skill sets, not that you're all working on, the smoothing out the data part, but that one person got to where they are because they had really clean data, and another person got to where they are because they had a really good model. How are you splitting up the work in this current team?
Yeah. So I per the rules of competition, I can't talk about it until after the competition is over. But yeah,
I almost got you.
We are specializing.
Okay. Yep. Cool. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about how you specialized after the competition's over. Neat. Okay. I want to talk about the experiment that we started on the last podcast.
Yes.
Specifically, I would like to talk about how furious I am at how effective it was.
Yeah, I know.
This happens so often. I have such a high opinion of myself. Like, I'll hear about these tricks of like, if you want to get something done, write it down. And I'll be like, I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
I can surely see how that would work for someone else, but that wouldn't work for me because I don't need to write things down. I can hold things in my head and just think about them. And then I'll try it, and it'll be the most effective thing I've ever done. And I'll be like, gosh, why? So I've done much better over the last several years of like consistently notching down just like where I actually am and what I actually need and what actually moves the needle forward of getting me to do things. And last week, I felt so confident that I just wouldn't be affected by this. And like the mental framing I had going into this was like, well, I know this isn't going to work for me, but it sure would help my friend Chris. So I'll do this for Chris so that Chris can have better motivation. Because while I am this highfalutin, very person who doesn't do this, poor Chris, I'll do whatever I can to help him. So it was the most effective thing that I've done probably in the last year for pushing forward File Inbox. I have some stats on it. We worked together for 5 hours and 55 minutes last week. I worked a total last week for 9 hours and 26 minutes on File Inbox, which is about as much as the previous 60 days that I got done in 5 days. Wow is correct. If I was looking at the graph of this, of like, what was the intervention that you did? You just scheduled time on your calendar to work at the same time as your friend.
Yeah.
Okay, can you do that twice as much? I'm just so mad. And like it was fun. And the first day, I felt a little dejected because I was like grinding the gears again, and there was like rusty stuff in there, and I was like, file inbox again. All right, here we go. And the second day, I was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. And I came up with this clever thing to do. And I get to use these fun new Tailwind components. This is fun. And the third day and onward, I was just jamming. It was so much fun. And then it got to be Friday, and I was like, all right, what time can you work tomorrow? And you were like, Christian, tomorrow is Saturday.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, of course. I'll get to work on my fun projects now because that's the whole reason I was doing this. So yes, of course, I'll see you Monday. And I've just been so excited to get back to work. I'm furious.
And then I canceled our one earlier today because I had to talk to the buyer.
I was upset about that. I did still get a palm in. I would love to know what your experience was like doing this, because I think it was the same sort of thing. Like this Slack integration, I think was the principal thing that you've been working on.
Yeah.
And you also seem like pushed that forward way further than you have in the last few months. How was that from your perspective?
Yeah, it was nearly identical in that I was like, I don't need this, but I think it'll help Christian. And we did it. And same thing. First day, I like felt all the crusty, gunk on the gears sort of coming off. And it's the kind of thing where if I was doing it myself, I wouldn't have I would have been just like, oh, this is hard, and went to Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And but I pushed through it because we were working on it. And all we did is we set up a time and we turned on Zoom and had, we muted our mics and just worked for 2 hours at a time or something.
Yeah.
Broken up. And it was super effective. And so by the end of it, I had to relearn how the Slack API worked. Like I had to relearn how the Rails app was structured because I hadn't touched it in 6 months. And I had exact same experience.
I'm so proud of us. And it was much easier for me to be proud of you than it was to be proud of myself. So I took that pride and then put it back on myself. I'm like, oh no, you're doing the same thing. Like, good job. Something that I noticed in both of us is I think we each drastically underestimated the time that these tasks would take. When I was talking to you about what the Slack integration would take, I think we outlined it a couple episodes ago, and you were like, well, I would need to do these 4 things, and this one's optional, and that would take like a day or two. And in actually doing it, we're working for 4 Pomodoros, about 2 hours every day, and seems like there's still a lot of work ahead to get this on the Slack App Store. For me, I think the very first POM we did on the very first day, I was like, well, for this very first POM, I think I could get all the page CRUD working, so I can create, read, edit, delete, and an upload page. And I am still working on that.
Yeah.
And after the first POM, I think the only thing I did was like, well, I had to smooth out the authentication system because it didn't work in these edge cases. And I was just wildly optimistic. So the mistake that I think I was making was wildly overestimating the amount of my own ability to motivate myself and to do work, and wildly underestimating the amount of time that the work would take. And I think by doing it this way, this just forces me to move forward and be reasonable and not overwork myself. It felt so effective on so many different levels. So I would love to do this again next week and hopefully for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, it was super effective for me as well. I'm also mad at how good it was, but that's good. We found something that actually worked. So it got me excited about working on SaaS again. I think one of the things about this is kind of stepping back to your other point, which is underestimating the time. Like when I get into Flow, I can work for 8 hours basically in Flow, and that feels like 20 minutes. And so I'm like, when I was saying it would take 1 or 2 days, I meant 1 or 2 days of being in Flow for 8 hours, and maybe that would have gotten done. What we ended up working last week was 5 hours, like you said. So that's not even 1 full day of full Flow. And so, it's just really time is weird. Time is weird. Yeah.
I'm reminded of Jesse Anderson's thing on ADHD that that's a trait of ADHD is that you lose track of time and are just in flow. And I love those moments, and I can capture them sometimes, but I think the downside of that in the long term is it's unsustainable. When I have one of those days where I'm just working 10 hours straight, the next day I feel just like wrecked. Sometimes I can stretch it for 2 or 3 days if it's like I'm really jamming on the project. I think I did that with the recoding of Jordan Peterson's app. But that doesn't work for me. And then, I get to day 4 and I'm like, I just have to do anything else. And then the next day I'm like, well, I took a day off yesterday, but I worked so hard those first 4 days, so I can take another day off. And then a month later, I haven't pushed it forward at all. So I would much rather be going at this pace, because at the end of the 4 Palms, I'm like excited to keep working, and it sort of takes effort to pull me away from it. And then I start the next day like, oh boy, here we go. I get to do the thing that I wanted to do yesterday. I think that's a really important piece of it for me, is like, it's not just that this method is overcoming the starting inertia. It's that I stop before I get sick of it. And so then I'm excited to do it again. So the inertia for the next day is even lower. This feels like a method to like optimize for making it as easy as possible to get started. I think that's part of why this is really effective.
Yeah, that's a neat point. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but yeah, I felt similar. Yeah.
I have to say, because of my disease of just wanting to make apps, I had an idea while we were doing this of, wouldn't it be great if there was an app where here's the idea. You log on, it's like, working Palms with friends.app or something, and your video starts live streaming to this thing, and you see a grid of old people working, and you have just a global schedule of like, you start working at the hour and at 30 minutes past the hour, and you have a mandatory 5-minute break. And at the end of working, it pops up a prompt that's like, hey, record a short video of what you worked on. And then you say just like, you get 30 seconds to say what you worked on. And then you have a 5-minute break. So 30 seconds of those were spent recording your thing. And then if you want to, you can watch some updates from other people. Or if you have like if you want to do a smaller group of friends, if you have like 10 people working, you can watch all of those for your break. Or you could go and like go to the bathroom or whatever. And then you also have a log of all of your updates. So at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you can go back and see, what would it be? 4 Palms a day for 5 days times 30 seconds divided by 60 seconds. You have a 10-minute video of all of your updates from the whole week. So you get to recap all your week's work in 10 minutes. What's your hot take on that idea? I'm kidding. That's a distraction, and I can work on that if I want to, but only after my 4 Palms.
Yeah. So the first thing is, services like that sort of exist, not quite how you're describing it, but like I got the idea because there is a service that you can actually pay, and then you log on at a certain time, and there's like 20 people all co-working at the same time.
Interesting.
So those do exist. And then the other thing I was going to say is that is a little bit kind of like what async.dev was potentially going to be when I was thinking about that. The idea was, except it was for a whole day, and it was for like a private feed in a company, so that you could like share like actually company information and stuff like that. But it was like, what are you working on? And then a quick either screencast or just video or text about what you did. And then the idea is for your whole team at the end of the week, you have every day you have 60-second videos about what that person did and stuff like that. So I think it'd be I think I still think it's a good idea. But it's a distraction.
I might play around with that this week after my 4 Palms. Oh man! So I framed this last week as, I really want to be working on this flashcard app, but the rule is I have to do 4 Palms before I work on the flashcard app or before I do any other work. And I don't think I worked at all on the flashcard app. I thought about it a little bit, and I had the whole weekend to do this, and I just ended up doing other things. I cleaned out my whole office and bedroom and like reorganized stuff and bought a bunch of containers to do that in. So like stuff got done, but it wasn't the flashcard app, and I'm sort of confused why that is. Because that was the thing that I started the week like, here we go. This is okay. I'll begrudgingly do the file inbox stuff. Am I so easily tricked that just if I just focus on a thing, then that's the thing that I get more excited about? Because right now, just all the thoughts going through my head are all about file inbox stuff and serverless stuff, and I'm so excited to end this podcast so we can start doing our problems. I'm excited to keep learning more about myself and what the actual things are that I can do that actually move the needle into making me more effective at getting things done.
Yeah, so I've had this idea a lot, or this idea keeps popping in my head, especially thinking about this. Another thing I've done, which is just activation energy. I think we've used that term before, which is like the first Palm. That first Palm was really painful, actually, for me, because I had to like relearn my app. I had to relearn the Slack API, and like all that. Once I got over that, then I was just coding. And once you're coding, like coding is coding for me. It doesn't exactly matter what it's about. Like once you're coding, it's interesting to just be coding. And so a lot of it is just forcing yourself over that activation energy. Another way to think about it is, I think I mentioned this in our POM session too, which is, so John Cleese has this great, he was of MoneyPython, and he has this great talk about how to be creative basically, but he talks about the open mode versus the closed mode, or he calls it play versus work basically. And in order to, he's talking about writing, like writing comedy, but it applies for software development too, which is you have to have some open mode, like some play, like some, in that's when you like think of features and what this can be in 6 months and all that stuff. But you also have to turn that into closed mode, and the closed mode for us is like doing the actual coding. And I think we get stuck a lot in the open mode, and then the initial part of a project is still open mode for us. It's still like playing. At least that's how I feel about it. The closed mode is more painful to do, and that's the kind that you have to sort of force yourself to do. And so like I think what we're doing here is basically forcing ourselves into the closed mode of doing the actual work. Then once I'm in it, it's still coding. I like coding, so that's fine. But it's just getting into the closed mode is painful sometimes.
I like that framing of open mode and closed mode. I'm reminded of a framework of convergent and divergent, or like MapReduce, that you spend one mode in this creative divergent, like you're looking at all the possible solutions, and then the second mode you whittle those solutions down and you actually do the work and you are moving forward. And the expansive creative mode, that is usually more fun for me. Cool. Well, I can see getting stuck on either end. I can see getting stuck on the divergent side of the open mode, but I don't think that's the problem that we have. I think we have too many ideas. I think we pulled in too many directions, and growth for us looks like wrangling ourselves back in and doing that closed mode convergent work. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, I feel like we unlocked something great in doing this, and I'm excited for going forward. Something I'd like to talk about is goals for this next week. I got to see, I had a check-in with you every 25 minutes this last week, which is so much fun. Yeah. Small aside, it's just fun. And then if I get stuck, I can ask you things, and we sort of know about the technical thing and what the other person's doing. So you offered me several pieces of advice that then directed the thing I was doing. And at the end of doing the 25 minutes, I looked forward to I wonder what Chris has gotten up to this last 25 minutes. And I sort of get the nice little dopamine boost of I got this thing done, and Chris got this thing done too. We were both working forward on the thing. So that was a lot of fun. Setting your intention for this next week, and having the experience of this last week, what would you like to be doing this next week? What I'm not even sure to frame this of goals or milestones, or how are you thinking about that?
Yeah. So one of the other reasons I like this is because I have 3 or 4 different things going on right now, and so one goal is I'm going to continue working on Acorn Chat, which is that Slack app, during our POMs. So we continue those, and that will just continue to keep being pushed forward. And then the other things I have going on are I have my first test in machine learning this week, and so I will do that because there's a deadline and I'm going to get a grade, right? So I don't have to force myself to do that. I will do that. The other thing that's happening is, there's MeetingPlace acquiring things, right? So I have to fill out some documents, and I have to figure out how to transfer assets and all that stuff. I will do that because this guy's going to pay me, and so I will do that. And then the last thing is this Kale competition, and I will work on that. 1, because it's fun. 2, because there's a deadline 3 weeks away, and so we got to get it done. And also now I'm on a team, and so I have a team to It's sort of similar, except it's all asynchronous. It's all we're doing it on Slack, and so we're this is what I'm going to work on for the next day or 2, and then we can all sort of come together and say this is what I did work on, and so it's kind of a similar feeling. It's just spaced out. So I feel like for every major thing that I have to do this week, I have a good forcing function to get me to do it. I feel good about those things.
Beautiful. What a great accumulation of these lessons that I feel like we've learned over the period of doing this podcast, of that you're more motivated when there's a competition. That you're more motivated when there's a deadline for a thing. That you're more motivated when there's a specific task of if you if you do these things, you get this amount of money. We found out this last week that we're both very motivated by just scheduling time on the calendar to do a thing. Like, and then all of these things coming together. Like, my gosh, you're setting yourself up for just a beautiful week of getting so much done. And these, I'm consistently interested in how, when things happen, they tend to all happen all at once. And that seems like that's the week that you're about to have. You're like, there's 4 different pretty big things that are happening that are all happening at around the same time. That at least for me, when I'm in less of a mode of getting things done, like any one of those things would just feel like, oh man, all right, this one thing is going to take up all my time. But because you have these systems and you have these machines, and like, it's just all of those things are going to happen effectively effortlessly. You're just going to flow from one thing to the next. It's all going to be happening at the same time. You know, you're going to end up getting your grade back for the test at the same time that you're getting the check for selling your app, at the same time that you're launching the app in the Slack App Store. It's beautiful. It's cool to see you working this effectively. Yeah,
it feels really good. And you're right, I would be otherwise overwhelmed, but I feel like I have sort of systems now for each of these things. I think it's going to go okay. Yeah.
Cool. I feel effective and successful. This feels good. I would similarly like to keep directing my palms towards file inbox work. That's going so well. I almost want to just keep it at that. If the only thing I do this week is like lock in that system, that would be very successful. Potential stretch goals I'm thinking about are, I could set a goal for myself for doing this flashcard app, but I feel like that's going to happen anyway. Like I've still been chewing on it in the back of my mind and watching YouTube videos about the Yankee algorithm, and I feel like that's probably just going to happen. A way that I would like to be better right now is I'm kind of slacking on administrative stuff. There's some like personal emails that I'd like to be doing. That I even have a system where like I can get things done that Rachel can take care of just by forwarding the email to her, and I just haven't gone through it yet. So I think a reasonable goal would be if I also spent 1 Pomodoro a day, in addition to the 4 and file inbox, if I spent 1 Pomodoro on administrative stuff. That feels tractable. I something I've noticed though is there were a few days we had where we weren't able to perfectly align the 4 palms, and so we would schedule something like, okay, well, we'll do the first 2 or 3 together, and then just at some other point in the day, you do your last 1 or 2. And the first day that happened, you were like, all right, gotta go, and I was like, all right, I'll get mine done in the next hour. And I was like, well, I have to go. I just need to go to this one thing first. And then I went to do it again. And I was like, well, now that I'm here, I might as well like put laundry in because, I'm already up. And 2 hours later, I was like, where have I gone? What am I doing? And I had to drag myself back and get it done again. And then, something else happened immediately afterwards. And I cut myself so much more slack if I don't have in the back of my mind, like, okay, Chris is waiting for me. I told him I'd be back in 3 minutes, and it's been 2 minutes and 45 seconds. So like, I got to go straight back there right now. So I think in that framing, a thing I'm fearful of is if I just set my intention to do 1 extra Pomodoro for administrative stuff, it would sort of go that route that I'd just be like, well, that's a thing I'd like to do at some point, but I've got this break to do. So I think if I do that, I would either, if you'd be open to it, want to bump up our number of palms to 5 a day, or I would need to be really Machiavellian of like, okay, I have to do this palm immediately after finishing with Chris, and I need to do it on the same schedule as I was doing before, or immediately before would also work. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we could probably bump up to 5. I think that's still only 2.5 hours a day, which sounds very reasonable to work. Although I did notice after 4 straight palms, I was a little drained. So there's that to think about. But the other thing I was going to suggest is, since you are excited about File Inbox again, and you will probably work on that now anyway, you should probably do your administrative palms like first. Like,
I sure should.
The first of 4 is administrative, and then tell yourself you get an extra, File Inbox palm after we're done. That's what I suggest.
Oh, I hate that, which I think means that's absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, Chris, I don't know that I'm ready for that. Oh, I need 1 more week. I need 1 more week of doing it like this.
All right.
Okay, we'll talk about it next week.
All right.
Okay, I just want to make it. I want to make sure this sticks. I don't want to push too hard. I feel so lame.
The other thing we could do is, even if I we could try 5, and if 5 doesn't work, if I'm just too drained, then I could start you on your next one, and then just leave the Zoom call,
Yeah.
and then you'll be working on it.
Yeah. Okay. That feels more manageable. I feel like I could do that.
All right.
Okay. That feels safer. I agree with you. I think that's the right thing to do to start it. But man, because that's the same rationale of like why the file inbox stuff has gotten working. Because that was because I'm doing that before any other work. That's how it got done every single day. Oh yeah, man. But it's okay. I'm working with who I am. I'm working with the amount of work I'm able to do, and even though I am sometimes disappointed, like in this moment, with where I actually am versus where I think I should be, this is the most effective way to push forward. So
Yeah.
that's what we're going to do. All right, cool.
As an aside, by the way, I have felt this way at jobs or consulting, things before. Like I do 2 hours of work at a job, like 2 hours of intense work, and then I just feel like super drained and do nothing the rest of the day. And I feel super bad doing that because I'm at a job, right? And but we can talk about this openly because we're our own bosses. So who cares? So it's another benefit I think of working for yourself is that you can actually try to address these things honestly.
Yeah. Because if I was doing this at a job and I was contracted to be working for 8 hours a day, working for 8 hours in a day is really hard. If you're actually working, that's so much time. If you're working for 16 Pomodors a day, I've had those days, but it's like far and few between, and I just got to be jamming on everything. Like, my health has to be great, I got to be eating really well, I have to have slept really well, I have to be really aligned in exactly the work that I'm doing. It would be different if someone else was setting the work for me. That would make it more straightforward. If it was, if I'm just getting fed work and I don't also have to be doing the work of generating the work, that would reduce the cognitive load a little bit. But like, I could so easily see myself slipping into this narrative of like that I was actually working for 8 hours, but really I wasn't. But I had to maintain that narrative and keep that lie up because that's the story I had to be telling whoever was managing me. I part of the nature of this work, of being in total control of it, that I like, is that I can just be brutally honest and say like, look, I'm a lazy son of a bitch, and I struggle with getting started, even doing 2 hours of work. And once I've done that, I need like rewards for myself of that I have other work after that I can do, and that's where I am. And there's no, I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm just honestly trying to get more stuff done. That feels like a clearer way to become a better person.
Yeah. And also, as this is kind of an aside, but in real workplaces, you often have like meetings during the day to break up the time, which is kind of an interesting. So like a lot of people are like destroy all meetings, which I sort of agree with, but also like meetings break up real work sometimes, and like your engineers aren't probably working straight for 8 hours. Some people can, but I don't know many who really can work straight for 8 hours. So having some breaks is good. Yeah.
I loved our system of doing the breaks, doing 5 minutes, just like a little chat. What'd you work on? Here's what I worked on. All right, let's go. Come back in 3 minutes. Like that worked really well for me. That's a nice little breaking point that gets me back on track. That helps me step out for a second and get a bigger perspective of, I've been lost in the weeds of picking a specific rich text editor, but now that I have to just tell Chris about it, I'm stepping back and realizing like, oh, actually, I could just pick one and it doesn't really matter. That feels really good.
Cool. I don't have anything else to say about that. This is totally unrelated. Sorry for the audio quality. My microphone is being stupid again. I bought a brand new microphone, a USB microphone, and it is not working. So something on my computer, I think, is messed up. No idea what it is.
The specific problem we've been having is that Chris's audio doubles. Like, as he's talking, about every 5 seconds, it'll repeat the last half a second of audio. And I have
only
no
on
idea
USB mics. Only on USB mics, not the built-in mic.
Yeah, could that be like an audio drive? It's a mystery. If you're a listener of this podcast and you know why that might be happening, we would love to know, because this has been a frustrating issue. I have one more thing I just want to mention, which is that as part of sort of in the same vein as like taking steps forward on big projects like selling your company, I went to go see an allergist, and that's something that I've been wanting to do for like the last 15 years because I have suffered debilitating allergies from cats and Timothy grass pollen and other things, and it I think became part of my narrative of just like, well, this is just part of who I am and it sucks. And I went to go see an allergist, and he was like, "Oh, you should start by doing a nasal rinse twice a day and taking Flonase twice a day." And I was like, "Wait, Flonase is a steroid. I thought you're not supposed to take that chronically because that can be bad for you." And he was like, "That is a thing that happens with steroids, but not with fluticasone, the local steroid that's the active ingredient in Flonase, because it's just local, right to the spot where it's delivered. It's one of the safest drugs there is. Do it." And I was like, "Well, okay, I guess I'll try it." And the first day I did, I was around Sarah's cat and had nothing. I could breathe fully, no allergy symptoms, no itchy eyes, no watery nose. Felt like a huge life improvement. So I would like to be doing more of that, please. Problems that I think I have that are unsolvable, I think a lot of them probably have solutions as easy as if you just take this very safe medication every day, the problem will go away. So very good life improvement week this last week. I feel like I had some great improvements, and it feels good. Looking forward to doing it this next week also. Chris, that's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I'll see you next week. Goodbye.